I want to just spend a few minutes and talk to you a little bit about T-Mobile and why this partnership is so important to us, why we think we're doing something different and revolutionary here, and how you all can help us get better over time. The first question is, I want to know how many people are T-Mobile subscribers here? How many people wish they were T-Mobile subscribers? Come on, everybody. And for those of you who aren't T-Mobile subscribers, why aren't you a T-Mobile subscriber yet?
I live in Canada.
I'm Canadian. I can understand why. Yeah. Come on, why are you not a T-Mobile subscriber yet? Coverage. Well, we have something to say about that today. We have a lot to say about that. Do you all like paying too much for wireless? No. Do you all like horrible overage charges? Do you all like ridiculous international roaming bills, $500 a month when you come back from the Orient? You like that stuff? Stay with your current carrier. If you don't, we have something to say. So let me just talk to you a little bit about, first of all, who we are. Mark will talk to you a little bit about our network and the improvements we've made and what we think we can offer in the IoT space. And then Evan will spend obviously some time on the stuff that you really care about, which is how the product works. But first of all, just a little bit of history. We are the Un-carrier. We're sort of a self-styled revolutionary. We're a self-styled attacker. We really began this journey 3 years ago in earnest with a mission to fundamentally change wireless, with a mission to rewrite the rules of wireless, with a mission to liberate wireless, make it easy, simple, transparent, price competitive, and change the restrictions that, as our CEO John Ledger calls dumb and dumber, AT&T and Verizon, that they put on wireless. And we've got a little bit of the same thinking that goes into what we're doing today with Twilio. It's all about changing the Internet of Things and enabling you, the developer community, to come up with those great applications by giving you access you have never had before to wireless in a way that's simple, transparent, and scalable. So a little bit about what we've done in the consumer market, what we think we've done for the industry is infusing our philosophy of how we're going after the Internet of Things in partnership with Twilio. So that's the basic Un-carrier. I mean, I can tell you a litany. I can talk for hours about some of the innovations we've brought to wireless. But this is near and dear to our heart. But I mean, it just speaks to the kinds of things that we hope to do in the future with you. So this started about 3 years back. What we said is we did two big things. We separated the phone from the rate plan. We made people actually pay for their phone. Or you could, we'd lend you money. Effectively, you could buy it in an installment plan. And then we freed customers from contracts. And today, about 130 million customers in the US, consumers in the US, are contract free because of what we did. And initially, AT&T and Verizon and Sprint, they said, well, people will never go for that. People love subsidies. People like their contracts, et cetera, et cetera. But over time, they've all changed. They've followed us. And so we have had a track record of innovation with what we call Un-carrier moves. These are kind of a signature things we do that are permanent changes in the way that we go to market and are permanent for all our customers, not just new customers, but for all our customers. We've had a series of 10 of these things, Un-carrier moves, and we're coming up on the 11th. And to us, that's symptomatic and it's characteristic of the innovation we've brought to wireless. So one after another, we believe we've knocked down barriers that consumers have had in making wireless simple, transparent, affordable, and flexible. And it's that same philosophy that we hope to bring to the IoT world. So that's kind of why, you may ask, it's a good question for Twilio, why T-Mobile? And I think our answer from T-Mobile's perspective is pretty simple, because we're actually looking to drive innovation in the wireless market and trying to change the rules and unleash innovation. And this is very much in that spirit. Now, with all that, we have become America's fastest growing wireless company. Those of you who haven't yet signed up for T-Mobile, well, you have the privilege of joining 66 million other people. We have doubled the size of this company in 3 short years by bringing that kind of innovation to wireless. Mark will also talk about the network story. Fundamentally underpinning all this innovation and our customer growth is a dramatic rebuilding and extension, deepening, and fundamental improvements of our network. The network, if you thought you knew T-Mobile 3 years ago, you really need to think again, because the network is dramatically different. And the evidence of that is that we've doubled the customer base. We've attracted 30 million new customers effectively in a mature market where everybody already has wireless. So that speaks to both the innovation, and it also speaks to the strength of the underlying network. So customers are flocking to T-Mobile. We're growing. We're effectively the only really growing wireless carrier in the United States. And that's evidence of both the innovation and the network that we're bringing to the marketplace. Now, why IoT, and what are we trying to do? So as I said, fundamentally, what we're trying to do is we're trying to empower you, the developer community. Unlike AT&T and Verizon, our philosophy is we don't need to own everything. We don't need to be in every solution vertical. We're never going to be able to bring the best things to customers. We need to rely on a much, much bigger community, and far be it from us to dictate what the solution is in each and every application market. So what we want to do is we want to unleash lots and lots of people to go do that in partnership with us. So what are we bringing? Well, it's the first truly programmable access to a national wireless network. It's a network that covers 309 million POPs, or people in the United States, with 4G LTE coverage. We've got simple, transparent pricing to build your application and then scale. So I think, as you probably know, one of the biggest obstacles is it's very hard for you as individuals to come to my wholesale team or our wholesale team at T-Mobile and say, hey, I want a contract, I want to develop this thing, I want to bring out a new application for healthcare or agriculture or remote sensing or geological surveying. Whatever the case may be, it's very hard for you to come to a national carrier because you don't yet know how that application is going to evolve, what the demand is going to be, et cetera. So we've created a simple, transparent pricing scheme that allows you to get started literally very, very small and then scale to almost infinite size. And then we have a platform, the underlying network platform we have, as we say, already supports 66 million customers, and we're building it to scale to hundreds of millions of customers. Obviously, you're all familiar with Twilio and the great products they bring out, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And then just as fundamentally, I think we're committed to the Twilio philosophy of listening to what you want as developers. We've got a start in the marketplace, but we're committed to work with Twilio to understand what really will make your applications work, what really will enable you to get to market with a thing that's really going to make people's heads spins. And we're open and we're receptive. We want to understand what that new functionality is and what we can do to enable you. So we're going to bring a philosophy that helps you get into market, but then helps you evolve and helps you build and scale. And that's sort of, in our world, that's kind of an Un-carrier way of doing things. We hope that's differentiated, we hope it's unique, and we hope you'll really get a chance to take advantage of the platform, as well as all become individual T-Mobile subscribers. So with that, let me turn it over to Mark, who will talk a little bit about the network and some of the innovations we're bringing there.
Slides are working here. Good. Well, great to be here today. My name is Mark McDermott, and I work at T-Mobile. I joined 2004, so I've been there for a good few years. And what I do in the company is help my team designs and builds the radio network that is the wireless piece that makes T-Mobile's network work well. I also have the privilege of working with the device technology team, which I'll share a little bit and how it relates to the Internet of Things in a moment or two. So there's one thing I want to get out of the way, just in terms of sort of being open with you guys. I'm actually going to confess something to this audience today. How many people write code in the audience today? Hands up, coders. Okay. I'm a failed programmer. I went through my major in software engineering and really never took to it. But what I did discover was that radio engineering and wireless was kind of my niche, kind of felt natural to me. So that's where I landed. But so I don't write code anymore, and thank goodness you guys write good code. So what I want to do today is share a little bit of the background, and Peter gave a little bit of an insight into where we came from, about how we got to this point in our history of being America's fastest 4G LTE network, the fastest growing wireless company in America, and having the fastest growing network in terms of breadth and reach. And it has been a journey which has given many of us gray hairs over the last 3 or 4 years. With John Ledger, our very courageous and bold leader, he's empowered us and got the resources we needed to go and develop this network, get it deployed, and make it work the way that we wanted to see it work. So a couple of factoids. We have today, on average, across our top 25 markets, 85 megahertz of radio spectrum deployed and in service, which is a very significant portion. Very exciting to see that volume of spectrum. In fact, news today I heard was that we were adding to that portfolio. I think the news hit the wire. I won't say any more about that. I'll let you read the news article. What we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years is increasingly allocating that spectrum to LTE, which I'll speak a little bit more about. But most of you are probably familiar with LTEs. It's the 4G mobile broadband solution that carries voice messaging and data so well. Today, at the Un-carrier, we can boast that we have crowdsourced measurements to prove that the average speeds in our network are 22 megabits per second across the network nationally, right? That's a huge, huge number. Yeah, thank you. And I'm also proud to say that's better than the other guys too. So we have more sites on the ground per square mile than the other guys. We have more spectrum allocated on those sites per square mile than the other guys. And because of that, we're able to deliver these speeds. The other story, which is probably very relevant, is that the time it takes for a packet to do a round trip on our network averages around about 75 milliseconds, right? Which doesn't sound like very much. But with some applications that we're beginning to imagine, the goal is to get that even lower, right? So that's an exciting challenge for any radio engineer. And of course, what we're doing with our network is really pushing the boundary on some of these new enabling technologies like voice over LTE, which is part of this API that we've developed with Twilio. And of course, some of the other messaging services that will move from what used to be the old telecom world into the internet domain with rich communication services and the like. So very exciting to see that happening. Here's an image of our radio network. And the magenta piece, obviously, is where we provide 4G LTE today. The total network, that's the LT portion, which is magenta, and the rest of the coverage, which we were shown in pale magenta, adds up to a total coverage footprint of 313 million covered Americans. Peter said it earlier, 309 million covered Americans have LTE service from T-Mobile today, which is a huge number. And in the last 12 months alone, we've increased the physical size of the network in terms of square mileage by 1 million square miles, right? 1 million square miles in 12 months, which is an enormous feat and very challenging to get this far. But we're not stopped. And as our CEO would say, we will not stop. So we're going to continue acquiring licenses. We're going to continue making very significant investments in the breadth, quality, and reach of this network until we have a network that literally paints the map entirely magenta, right? Now, I have to say, as I travel across America, and I go to some pretty remote places to camp and fish and do outdoorsy things, it's just great for me to experience T-Mobile's network with such a broad reach now. And 5 years ago, the challenge was that wasn't always the case, right? So this is us coming a long way and really stepping up our network game to the point where we can stand next to the big guys, AT&T and Verizon, and really hold our heads up high. So just a fantastic outcome. Today, this LTE footprint, and I'm really going to focus on LTE because that's where we're headed, comprises mostly of band 4 AWS-1 spectrum, right, band 4. And this is relevant for the device story. The next increment of coverage comes from band 2 LTE in the 1900 meg PCS band, and a smaller portion comes from band 12, which is the low band 700, right? That's in terms of reach. But what we have today, we have the band 12 low band, which is really the most reliable coverage layer we can stand up, deployed over 194 million covered Americans. And some of the news that came out today shows us a way of getting beyond that number in a very significant way. So very exciting stuff. We're registered to bid in the low-band auction, which is occurring, well, it should start any moment, I think, in terms of getting that spectrum freed up from the broadcast community. And T-Mobile has established a pretty deep set of pockets to go and pursue some great assets in the low band. So we'll be sharing more news with that with you guys as we learn more about that as the auction wraps up later this year. So technology lineup, and it's worth just grounding ourselves in this. The GSM 2G network that we operate today, we've committed that we will maintain circuit-switched voice service across the entire footprint through 2020 on a combination of 2G and 3G modems. Right, that's important to think. You've got to have the 3G and the 2G together. And with those two combinations, we will support circuit switch voice through the end of the decade. And obviously, that comes with data connectivity too. But of course, beyond that period, the future really is about two things. It's about LTE, it's about the evolution of LTE, and 5G. And how many people in the audience have heard of 5G? Yep, pretty much everybody, yeah, good. So that's good. I'll talk a little bit more about 5G when I come to that piece. But we feel very passionate internally that LTE is the right technology to move towards. It's more future-proof, and I'll explain later that has a foundational part to play with 5G. It has the potential to be extremely low latency. It has the potential to be very efficient on battery consumption, which matters when we come, to some of these more sort of extreme IoT applications. And it has a broad ecosystem support, both in chipsets, modems, and modules. So we look forward, to the future, and specifically what I want to do is sort of compare and contrast our LTE network as it exists in the hands of consumers today and smartphones. Really a technology that was developed for mobile broadband, and my goodness, it delivers big, right? At home in Seattle, my T-Mobile handset, in and around my house, gives me a connection that's faster than the Comcast internet service that I have, right? So I've not been a big fan of Comcast. I tend to rely on T-Mobile, right? So, but recognizing that capability is not one size fits all, the ecosystem, the standards bodies, and T-Mobile specifically have been working very hard to liberate new forms of LTE that give us new ways of getting things done with modules, which can extend the coverage range, right? Which can deliver lower power consumptions on modules, which lead to longer battery lives, and ultimately lower cost through scaling. And some of the lower cost piece comes from simplification too. But we have a clear roadmap now to deliver these capabilities and extend the value of LTE well into the future. Now, today, I think it was last September, I should say, we were very proud to announce at CTIE that we'd launched Category 1 compatibility on the T-Mobile network for devices. And today we have 4 at T-Mobile's labs. My team is actively validating chipset modules from 4 major chipset vendors. And I won't name them specifically, but it's the 4 big ones that you'd expect to see. And we have modules that we're testing as well, and that's very, very exciting. Looking forward to 2017, and I think this is an opportunity for us to come back and talk to you all later this year, or when it's convenient. We will have the first capabilities to deliver Category M1 and M2, which is really how we take LTE from where it is today to those extended range capabilities, where we're actually repeating transmissions to ensure reliable delivery in very difficult, deep areas, maybe underground or parking lots or subterranean or very remote places. But these advanced category techniques will take a little bit of time to develop and deploy, and we're currently in the middle of completing standardization on all of those features. Longer battery life. We saw demonstrations earlier this year where the goal is to get down to consumptions where multiple years of battery life would be possible with an LTE modem, right? So that's pretty exciting. And lower cost, of course, I won't be speaking about prices here, but we know and we're deeply motivated to make sure that LTE modules and chipsets are affordable so you guys can truly go and make the most of the new capabilities. So just an exciting story around devices. So with that, I thought it'd be worthwhile, we all thought it'd be worthwhile just giving you a very sort of brief introduction to 5G as we see it. This is a story that has grabbed the headlines across the country and across the globe. And of course, it's one more than 4G, so it's obviously going to be better, right? Who's familiar with the hype cycle of hype and the trough of disillusionment? Well, I want to talk about disillusionment only to say that 5G is very clearly on the upswing as far as hype and excitement goes, right? And let me just back away a little bit and say the thing that I find particularly exciting about 5G is the fact that for the first time the wireless business, the wireless industry, has recognized that to develop these capabilities and make them relevant for consumers, for companies, for integrators, we really need to have an active, open discussion with the community of developers, right? Whether that's companies on the large scale or very, very niche focused developers on the small scale. It doesn't really matter. We have to have a dialogue with everybody. That's a part of the relationship with Twilio and with each of you that we're particularly excited about, because it gives us a dialogue that's going to help us inform how we think of 5G. But to give you some of the headlines, whatever you can imagine we could achieve with 4G, the vision with 5G, which will come in the 2020 timeframe, is that we will massively change the capacity of the network. We'll go from supporting hundreds of millions of devices and SIM cards to supporting potentially billions. We will reduce the latency across the network from what I mentioned earlier in the average numbers of 75 milliseconds down to the 1 millisecond range, which is faster than the home internet service you can achieve with fiber today, right? So that implies new ways of distributing applications very close to the consumers in neighborhoods and in buildings. So very, very exciting there. The potential to operate at very low power levels and low consumption levels. Again, that's about battery life. Gigabit speeds, which clearly will require a lot of battery power to achieve, but there are ways to get to gigabit connection speeds which are very, very achievable. And I've mentioned the billions of connections already. So what you'll see T-Mobile do over the next year or two is beginning to sort of develop some of these use cases and demonstrate them. And part of the dialogue we hope to have with each of you will be a dialogue around informing us of what your customers and partners need and want from 5G too. So big opportunity there, I would say. So that's 5G, and with that, I think I'm going to hand it back to Evan. So thank you for your time today. I think we'll be taking Q&A at the end, and Evan.
Thank you, Mark. I bring my own clicker. Don't leave home without it. Can we switch to the Mac? Thank you very much. All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Evan. I'm a product manager at Twilio. I've been working on the programmable wireless product that you all saw previewed today, if you will say, at the keynote. Did anyone here enjoy the keynote demonstration? You all excited about programmable wireless? Am I right? Okay, excellent. So my goal today is to sort of elaborate on what we talked about this morning. I guess I would summarize it as saying I want to put a little bit of meat on the bones. You've got a sense of what programmable wireless is about, and we're going to actually dive in and say, as developers, here's what you're getting as a customer of Twilio purchasing programmable wireless. And I'm going to do that in a few chapters. We're going to talk about functionality. We're going to talk about APIs. Can I see another show of hands for the developers in the audience? All right, great. We're actually going to see some not quite code, but some, we'll see some curl scripting, woohoo! And we're going to talk about pricing, and then we're going to talk about future priorities, that is where we want to take the product over the next 9 to 12 months. So let's start with functionality, break it down to what you're really getting. And I'm going to express this in terms of the API resources. So we're just going to talk about those REST resources that you're going to be given access to and what those are going to be providing you. I should mention that the product is currently in developer preview, so some of the things that I'll talk about today, I'll be saying these are available today in developer preview. Some of the things that I talk about, I'll be saying these will be available later on this year. So let's start with one of those. and that would be the Orders API. So what we plan to ship very soon is an API that allows you to essentially provision, ship, distribute SIM cards into your supply chain however it is you please. So this might be that you need 5 SIM cards for your development team. It might mean that you need 10,000 SIM cards and you need them shipped straight to a production facility. We're going to be exposing a REST API for this. The Devices API, this exists today, and we saw a little bit of a preview of it in the keynote. I should say the Devices API is really involved with the management and lifecycle of physical devices. You can think of a device as being anything that you might be shipping. It's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship with a SIM card. You might have a device that has multiple connection modalities. You might have a device that has no connection modalities. It's not really catered for by us right now, but there's some vision there. Then you also have the device usage sub-resource, and this is the way that you're going to be able to query, you're going to be able to set up alerts and callbacks and generally understand how your devices are using connectivity. There's also this Commands API, and we saw a little demo of this today. Commands is a very, very simple idea. So as you guys know, Twilio is very strong in the SMS space. We send billions of SMS messages a month. We've created a stripped down version of that messaging API that uses the SMS channel, but does not require you to have phone numbers on devices. So you don't need to have a phone number to send a message. You don't need to have a phone number to receive a message. You can use this Commands API instead. So you can think of it as simple machine-to-machine messaging from your device to the cloud and vice versa. And the last one is rate plans. And rate plans, a little different to the traditional definition of a rate plan, but a rate plan is how you will control what your individual devices are capable of performing, how much usage they are allowed over any given period, and things like their roaming capabilities as well. So let's just dive into how some of this stuff works. The first example that I have here is how would I create and activate a device? And you could do this in 2 steps. So you could create a device, and you could do that at, say, the moment that you're manufacturing it, or previous to the moment that you're manufacturing it, and you could activate it later. And when you're activating it, you're essentially assigning some connectivity modality, in this case a SIM card, to the device and putting it onto a rate plan. So we actually have helper libraries for all of the languages that Twilio traditionally has supported. So we have a PHP library, we have a C# library, a Node library, a Java library. We have all those libraries. I'm trying to be really agnostic today. I'm just showing you curl commands. I'm sure everyone has some sense of understanding of what this actually means behind the scenes. But essentially you can post to this URL /wireless/devices. You can give your device an alias. The alias is probably something that means something to you internally. So maybe you have a serial number, or maybe you have some sort of internal user ID, and you want to attach a very unique ID to this device you're creating. And then you want to give it, you can give it a friendly name. A friendly name is it's not enforced to be unique, but it's just some sort of tag that you want to associate with the device, and a rate plan. And in this case, you can think of a rate plan as sort of like a profile of configuration. It's very unlikely that you're going to want to ship 10,000 devices with 10,000 different configurations on them as it pertains to the roaming capabilities and the usage capabilities. It's much more likely that, for instance, if you're manufacturing smart meters, that you might have a rate plan for a San Francisco smart meter, or you might have a rate plan for a California smart meter. And that rate plan is going to encapsulate that set of permissions and capabilities and caps also that you want to put on any device that's created within that rate plan. I left a line off this, which is there should also be a data parameter being passed, which is called the SIM identifier. And that is where you would pass the ICC ID, or the little tiny 20-digit number that's printed on the back of the SIM. And that's how you would associate a SIM card with a device. From there, you might want to query a device's usage, and this is very simple. You hit the usage sub-resource. And the usage sub-resource is going to give you a lot of things. It's going to give you the usage in terms of the actual units used. So it's going to tell you how many minutes you've used, how many messages you've used, how many megabytes you've used. It's also going to tell you that in terms of the pricing. So it will return something that's not shown here, but it'll say, in terms of US dollars, you have spent 50 cents on this device over the period that you specify in the request. So you could say, I only want to know what the usage was in the last 2 days, you provide a start date and an end date, and we're going to return to you the usage on that device, not just in terms of, like I say, the actual megabytes, minutes, and messages, but also in terms of how much that actually cost, how much the billing was for that. The device usage API is available in developer preview, but I should preface that by saying that right now the granularity is very broad. So with the SIMs that you're getting today, if you are hitting the device usage API, you're going to be getting usage for the calendar month. And that's one of the things that we're going to really narrow down on in the next few months, and I'll get to that when we talk about our roadmap priorities. You can configure a rate plan, and I talked about this a little bit already. With a rate plan, it's quite cool, actually. You can specify a unit and a period. So let's say you have a device and you are putting this on a plan where you want it to only be able to use a few megabytes a month. You can do that. You just say 1 month, and in this case, the data cap is 999 megabytes. So you're saying, I only want this SIM, or this device, to be able to use 999 megabytes per month. But you can do something cooler than that. You can say, well, it's not really important to me how much they use a month, but I don't want any runaway billing. So I want to ship a SIM in a device, and this device is, some sort of smart IoT device, and there's no reason that it should use more than, say, a megabyte a day, or a megabyte every 3 days. And so you can specify, instead of months, you would say days. Instead of the cap period being 1, you would say 3, and you would say it should use 3 megabytes. And that cap will automatically renew itself on that period that you've specified. So you can go as broad as a month, you can bring it down and do much more granular things there. You also have the opportunity to set, for individual capabilities, messaging, commands, data, and voice, to actually set what the roaming capabilities are on that device. Or I should say, on any device associated with this rate plan, which you can think of as a sort of configuration profile for devices. The Commands API, we saw a little bit of this today. Jeff wrote a nice little sample app using Node.js that sent just over 200 commands in a few seconds. And commands, like I say, are SMS messages under the hood. So this is a really good opportunity if you have a GPRS modem or an LTE modem, 3G modem in your device. Instead of telling that device, hey, I want you to wake up every week and send some data to a server, you can actually just say, I want you to exist in a very low power state, and I will send you an SMS message. So you don't need to have your data connection active. I'll send you an SMS message, or a command in this case, once a week, or on some schedule that's driven by my own business logic based on some event, and you would interpret that message on the device and say, okay, it's now time for me to report up something. And you may issue that response via a command. You could send a command, an SMS command, back to the cloud, but you could also use that as an opportunity to actually fire up that data connection for a very short period of time, communicate in a more rich manner, and then again shut down the data connection. So there's a lot of things that you can use this for. And because all of you are here at Signal, and because this is how Twilio does business, you can actually learn more about all of the things we just talked about. You can learn the entire set of APIs, the entire set of capabilities, all of the details. We actually have examples for all of those helper libraries that I mentioned, Node, PHP, Java, at twilio.com/docs/API/wireless. Now, to access this page, you will first have to go through the Twilio console. So you'll log into the console, you'll enter the code, the access code that was emailed to all of you as Signal attendees, and once you've entered that code, you're essentially in the wireless developer preview. And from there, you can go to twilio.com/docs/API/wireless, and you can see the full set of documentation. And we would absolutely love your feedback on this stuff. You will be the very first people outside of Twilio to see it. We would love to know how it resonates, what you find simple, what you don't find simple. We want to, of course, make our documentation as good and as intuitive as we possibly can. Let's talk about pricing. Now, pricing for this type of product is relatively difficult, and we think we came up with a really good solution. What we wanted to solve for two very different types of customers, or actually more than two very different types of customers. Jeff mentioned in the keynote today that the average data usage for an IoT device is somewhere around 5 megabytes. And that makes sense. If you're building a sensor or some sort of sensor actuator device that has an industrial purpose or something like that, you're not streaming any media, you're not sending any large files, you're just sending very simple instructions and structured or unstructured data back and forward. On the flip side, there's a completely different type of device, which is I'm building a video kiosk or I'm building digital signage, and I need to be downloading literally gigabytes of assets per month. And we wanted to design a pricing structure that worked for both of those use cases, whether you had a huge number of devices or whether you had a very small number of devices. So we want people to be able to get started with a small number of devices and ramp up to a large number of devices. And we think we came up with a pricing plan that works really well. But again, we'd love your feedback. The initial pricing for a SIM card is going to be $5. And this will come down with volume, as Jeff mentioned. This is a one-time fee. This is, I literally want to acquire a physical SIM card and put it on my account. From there, we have a voice component, and our voice pricing is super simple. For anyone who's used Twilio Voice before, the voice pricing is identical. It's the exact same price per minute. It starts at 1.5 cents a minute. It goes all the way down to 0.0113. Messaging, very similar. It starts at 0.015. It goes down to 0.0005. And these are based on the volume. And you can go to twilio.com/wireless/pricing, and you'll be able to see the full usage tables for these. We also have commands. We're pricing commands at 0.005. We don't have a volume pricing structure in place for commands right now. We don't see it as necessarily something that you're going to be doing in huge volume. But we are leaving that open, I guess. We're interested to see how people use this feature during the developer preview. And then we have data pricing. And this is where that idea comes in of wanting to solve for multiple use cases. So let's say you had a small number of devices and they're going to be using a large amount of data each. You're probably going to want to choose this top data pricing plan. And what that means is you're going to pay per SIM. So for every SIM, you're going to pay $25 for your first gigabyte. And then you're going to pay $15 for every subsequent gigabyte after that, and that's metered per gigabyte. But if you have a very large number or even a small number of devices that are using a very small amount of data, it's more likely that you're going to want to pool your usage. And you're going to want to pool your usage and you're going to want to pay for it per megabyte. And it's going to start at 10 cents a megabyte, and it's going to go down to 1.2 cents a megabyte. And all of the usage across all your devices is summed together, and you're billed based on that. So you go through the pricing tiers that we have based on the combined usage across all your devices. And we actually have the volume pricing, again, for this is published on the website. One of the very important principles at Twilio is this idea of no shenanigans pricing, which actually resonated when you were speaking earlier, Peter, about the way that T-Mobile broke up in pricing, and it's very true with us as well. We like this no shenanigans pricing. Everything is on the website, everything is published, everything is very transparent. And on that plan, I should say, and now I have to go through all the builds again, if you are pricing per megabyte, you will be paying a monthly recurring cost per SIM, which starts at $2 and comes down to 40 cents. And again, that's published on the site. So let's try and think about that through the lens of two common use cases. The first would be a sort of sensor and actuator network, say an industrial application, potentially a consumer IoT application. If you have 100,000 devices, you're going to go through our standard rack rate pricing tiers, and it's going to come out to about $54,000 for the monthly recurring fee for those devices. Then you're using 2 megabytes of data usage on each of those SIMs. The total is 200 gigabytes. It comes out to about $19,000. And let's say you use 4 commands each a month just to wake that device up or to do something with it and query something from it. Your total, based on our standard rack rate volume tiers, is going to come out at about 75 cents per device per month, which we think is pretty awesome. That's less than the rack rate for a Twilio phone number. And you literally are getting a connected device and SIM card connected per month. But that's very different from, say, some digital signage, which is using 1 or 2 gigabytes a month. So let's look at an example of that. Let's say you have 400 security cameras, or 400 cameras of some kind. And these cameras are using 2 gigabytes of data each per month. Well, at the base rate, you're going to be paying $10,000, let's say, for those devices. and then you're going to be paying $6,000 for the combined usage of both of those gigabytes, which comes out to about $40 per device per month. So it's really up to you to choose, and you set this in the rate plan, what billing model your devices should be on. Is this something where you're wanting to pay per SIM, or is this something where you're wanting to pay across all of your devices combined? And we think it should be relatively obvious. We are building a pricing calculator to help with this, but it should be relatively obvious when you look at the nature of your use case and the nature of your device, what the correct pricing plan is. So I'll wrap up by talking a little bit about where we're going. Obviously, we are in, as I've mentioned multiple times, we're in developer preview today. What that means is you have SIMs, you have data, and you have commands. Now, some of the stuff that Jeff demoed on stage today is not actually readily available yet. One of those, or the primary thing I'm talking about there, is voice and messaging functionality. So this is one of the really big priorities for us, and this is something that we're going to be aiming. How do I not be committal here? No, I want to be committal. We're going to do this we want to do this before we go into a broad beta. So we're going to target voice and messaging before we go into a broad beta. We also want to make sure we lock down global coverage. Right now, we're dipping our toes in the water. We're starting in the US. We want to learn a lot about the product, how people use it, and we want to quickly expand to cover our customers around the globe. As you know, Twilio has customers in over 100 countries around the world. We have phone numbers in over 40 countries around the world, and we think it's really important that we get there with global coverage on this product as well. We want to also, thank you. We want to also make sure we get really granular reporting and control capabilities. So I mentioned this before with the device usage, that right now the units of measurement are quite large, and we want to really quickly bring that down. We'd love to give you the ability to measure per minute, per second, per hour, whatever it is that you need to be measuring on, so that you get total control over monitoring those devices and potentially shutting them down or taking some other action if you need to. And then the last thing we really want to do is we want to give you fleet-level analytics. So what that means is, rather than just the granular reporting on an individual device, how many megabytes has this device used today, it's, over the course of a year or over the course of a month, what are all my devices doing? What are their traffic patterns? What are they, I don't want to say traffic patterns, what are their usage patterns? And we want to really make that a really true analytics style experience. So those are our priorities. We're going to get as much of this done as we can before we take this to a broad public audience, which we're hoping to do later this year. And yeah, that's it for me.